Hello, I am Connor and I like ants. Fun fact, according to current estimates, there are 86.8 quadrillion ants on Earth. To put this number into perspective, it looks something like this. This is about the number of humans on Earth. So, for each human, there is approximately 11,573,333.33 ants. So there's a lot of ants on Earth. But would they be able to conquer said Earth? Well, first off, there's more than just one type of ant. In fact, there's about 12,500 types of ant. One of the more notable types out there is the fire ant. They're highly aggressive ants with a painful sting, hence their name, and they can survive more extreme conditions than other ants. These ants are fully capable of creating rafts out of fellow ants thanks to their hydrophobic properties. This is usually used whenever a colony has to cross a body of water to reach their destination, and it's also used to survive floods. The ant raft formation can be held for up to 2 weeks, making water an ineffective option to kill them. They're also quite resistant to extreme temperatures, which means they are still active in the winter, although they're not immune to the cold, so fire ant numbers will still decrease dramatically during this time. But could they kill a human? Well, all ants are capable of suffocating a human and triggering allergic reactions, so yes. But some unique qualities to fire ants that would give them an edge against humans would have to be the severe pain their stings inflict. If there's enough ants, it could potentially cause shock or even cause a human to take their own life in order to stop the pain. Not only that, but the venom itself could even prove to be deadly. Many years ago, my mother had been bitten by hundreds of fire ants, and she'd run a fever afterwards. Clearly the venom had some sort of negative effect on the body, so while it's a very anecdotal piece of evidence, it does lead me to believe that fire ants could potentially kill in enough bites. Another noteworthy type of ant would be exploding ants. However, it's not a specific type, as there are multiple varieties of exploding ant. While you may currently be imagining this ant causing a gigantic, fiery explosion, that's sadly not the case. Their explosion is more along the lines of rupturing their own mandibles and gaster, which essentially means they're punching a hole in their jaws and butt. After they have ruptured their mandible and/or gaster, they then proceed to secrete a sticky and corrosive substance, which then glues their victim to themselves as the substance eats away at said target. But are they capable of doing the same thing to a human? Well, I honestly doubt these ants would really pose much of a threat to humans, but it's also pretty hard to determine with a small amount of research out there on these ants. Perhaps if there were a larger number of said ants, and they had easier ways of entering a human's orifice, as those substances would likely be quite harmful to ingest. However, that's just speculation. As is though, I don't see these ants posing anyone a threat. Also, one other thing I would like to note, these ants have an unsurprisingly low population. Have you ever wondered which insect has the most painful sting? If so, here's your answer, the bullet ant. Not only do they top the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, which is a list that measures the pain of insect stings, but they are also the largest ant out there. Measuring in sizes up to 1.2 inches, they are much larger than what you would expect from an ant. Fun fact, the reason this ant is even called a bullet ant is because many claim the pain from its sting feels like they have been shot. But not only is the pain extreme, it also lasts for about 24 hours as well. All that seems quite terrifying, but could these ants kill a human? Now, I've tried to find conclusive research on this topic, and it's honestly been quite difficult, so I'm merely going to make assumptions based off of what I know. I'm going to have to say yes, bullet ants are deadly. More so to people with heart problems, as they would be far more vulnerable to a heart attack, which would not be out of the question if someone is suffering an excruciating amount of pain. Other potential threats would be shock and suicide, as the pain would be far worse than any human being would ever be used to. Quick question, have any of you ever read the classic short story Leningen vs. the Ants? If not, I'd highly recommend it, as it's quite entertaining. To briefly summarize, in the story, a stubborn plantation owner is faced with a grave threat, an oncoming horde of flesh-eating ants. These ants roam from place to place, leaving behind a path of death and destruction. These ants are so deadly that if you were to get caught in a horde of them, your flesh would be stripped clean off your bones in seconds. Terrifying concept. But are they real? Well, sort of. The Dorylus, the type of ant that the story was very likely based on, was greatly exaggerated. The Dorylus is unique because it's a type of army ant, which are ants that don't permanently settle anywhere and will simply roam from place to place with numbers in the millions. They will temporarily settle in places with food until said food is gone. Then they'll proceed to raid the next spot with food. Another interesting fact to note is that army ants will literally form camps with their own bodies. Think of the ant raft, but this time they're making a nest out of ants. It's actually quite complex, as the expendable ants are placed on the outside, and as you move towards the center, the ants gradually become more and more important. The nest is called a bivouac, which is also the same name as a temporary makeshift camp made by humans, which is typically used in a military setting. However, would these clever beasties be able to kill a human? Well, perhaps an unarmored, crippled human being? Realistically, the odds of a human being caught in a massive Dorylus is quite slim. You would basically just have to stand there, waiting for the Dorylus to come to you in order for them to even get an opportunity to swarm you, as they do move very slowly. However, if they did somehow manage to swarm you, then the ants could inflict many cuts with their powerful mandibles, and if you were to fall over, they could easily swarm an orifice and suffocate you. However, they would not be able to strip your body clean of its flesh, unlike the ones in Leningen vs. the Ants. There are many other noteworthy types of ant, but there's just far too many to cover, so I'm simply going to move on. Now that I've showcased a few of the more interesting varieties of ant, would it be possible, in a completely theoretical scenario where ants are revolting against humans, could they succeed? Well, yes and no. The conclusion I'm realistically seeing here is a stalemate. The ants may cause a bit of damage while the humans are unprepared in the beginning, but after humans gear up with some protective suits, I don't really think ants could do anything to the humans. However, it's also sort of the same for humans versus the ants. As I stated at the beginning, there is a lot of ants. Using pesticides wouldn't even be an option in that scenario, because you would pretty much take down the planet with them. Flooding wouldn't work, as they could just form rafts to get to shelter. Using extremely hot or cold substances, things such as fire or liquid nitrogen, might do a bit of damage, but ultimately it wouldn't be able to take out all of the ants. Bombing the little demons would just be a laughable method, considering they are all over the world, so you would just blow yourself to bits trying that. And the only other method I can think of is a giant boot, and this is not a cartoon. Overall, killing all of the ants is no easy feat. But what about the ants killing humans? Well, while discussing the lethality of the various types of ants I researched, you probably noticed a trend. The majority of the ants are only able to kill in specific situations, and I struggled to find a single concrete method that would apply to all humans that are not incapacitated. So, I mean, they might hurt people, but there likely wouldn't be a humongous drop in human population, which is honestly a very disappointing conclusion. This is especially true if you consider the fact that humans would begin to wear armor to protect themselves against the ants, and no ant could really pierce through well-made armor. In the end, neither side would really gain anything, not even a victory, which is probably why the ants have yet to launch their attacks, for they are smart enough to foresee such an outcome. Or they're just, mindless insects that have no interest in conquering a planet. Personally, I'll stick to the former option.